Hey, so I want to talk about what I think is the primary core belief of what keeps us stuck in relationship with a narcissist. And there's several ways to say it, but basically I think it's the belief that the narc is a person like I am a person, and all people care about other people are like me, or other people want to love and be loved. I think all of these beliefs are kind of saying the same thing. The narc is like me, the narc is a person, the narc has normal human qualities. And this is a belief that leads to confusion about their behavior, your self-doubt, self-gaslighting, and trying to reason with them, trying to change their behavior, the pathological optimism that things will get better, trying to work it out, and this belief that if you give more and keep trying to love them, eventually they will see that and change. I think for me, the idea that the narc was a human like I was a human is really the core issue of why I couldn't let go and why I couldn't understand what was going on. And it's just such a basic thing that we just don't even think to question, because I don't know, maybe there's just a natural tendency of children to assume that other people are like them. We just don't even question whether or not the narcissist is not a person. That just never even entered into my mind. And when you can accept that a narc is a different sort of being and not a person like you are a person, then we will no longer be confused by them. And their behavior makes sense in the context of supply, control, manipulation, and abuse. They lack emotional regulation, and they lack comprehension skills, or they intentionally twist your words. They do not see the other as an individual with their own free will. They do not care about the needs of others or even realize that others have needs. They do not want to be loved or be loved. That's a really massive thing that I had to get, was they don't want love. And I was operating on the assumption that they wanted what I wanted. So I was saying, well, in this situation, if I was them, then I would feel better if I said this to me, and then I would do that. But then obviously the narc was not happy with that, because my assumption that they wanted what I wanted was flawed. And they don't feel responsible for their own behavior. This one still really baffles me. But they don't have any self-responsibility. They have no morality or guilt or remorse, and they don't care how you feel except if it affects them in some way. They are walking hypocrites and say one thing and do another. They have double standards of they can do whatever they want, but they have all these rules for what you can and cannot do. And then they project and scapegoat their own feelings onto you. They are intentionally trying to get you to think they love you while exploiting you. They feel no remorse for the deception or the abuse. They have no desire to change, or they cannot change. Communication is impossible. Receiving love is impossible, but they will tell you otherwise. They will say anything to get their way, and they will love bomb to draw you in, and they will deflect blame and make excuses to cover their abuse. So for me, this realization that narcs are not people, like we are people, helps to remove the guilt of no contact. And just the whole thing is so bizarre and terrifying that it's easy to see why we just didn't even entertain the possibility that the narc was not a person like we are a person. This is just not something that I don't think enters into a person's mind until they find out about narcissistic abuse. And the whole dynamic with a narc requires you to believe that they are human and not a parasite. And this is why they work hard to have you think that they are a human. And that's why in the love bombing phase they give you this false sense of connection and morality and caring about you. And we become biased based on this first impression. So when we first meet them and first get to know them, we make the assumption they are a person, and then that seems to be true based on how they're treating us. And then when the relationship slips into the devalue stage, we're operating with that original assumption that they are a person and they know how to love and they want love and that they care about it and all that stuff. And they count on us being horrified by how we've been conned and don't want to face it. So there's an element of our own pride involved, that we don't want to see how we have allowed ourselves to be deceived and conned. And obviously the responsibility is on them for how they behave, but we can't stop them from being like that. So all we can do is stop ourselves from being like unaware of this sort of thing, because that's what's kept me going into it again and again, was just assuming all of these people were people and this was just how people behaved. And unfortunately I didn't really have enough other examples of like loving people in order to give me like a kind of different impression. And unfortunately society is very psychopathic, narcissistic, and we have no role models in culture either, and it normalizes, you know, manipulation between men and women. It normalizes power dynamics between women. It's always, you know, dividing people over different things, and it just doesn't demonstrate compassion or self-protection or any of what I would consider like divine qualities of people, like standing up for other people and standing up for your own rights and just basic human decency in the pursuit of truth and spreading that truth. Like we don't have examples in culture of that. So I think that's why it's really an uphill battle to find out what normal is, because it's one thing to realize what abuse is and the fact that narcs are not people that you want to know, but then the question becomes, well then what is normal, and how do I want to be, and what is the kind of the highest nature of a human being that could be achieved, and how can we like move towards that, and then ultimately like reshape society so that if a child was abused they would have examples of other people in their lives who cared about them. And I don't think the abuse would have the same effect if we lived in a loving culture. Like I just don't think that the abuse could even happen, because someone else would notice and someone else would do something because they would feel that it was morally wrong to abuse a child, and then they would want to protect that child. Like it's still so bizarre to me that our culture just is so evil. There's just so many layers to it. But basically this belief that everyone who looks like a human is a human and has the same qualities that we have. I really think that's the foundational belief that keeps us naive and not seeing what's going on. So let me know if you've had a similar experience with not being able to fathom what the narcissist is. Like I really think that that is the biggest barrier to all of this. So thanks for watching.